The phrase net zero has been thrown around quite a bit.
Net zero.
Net zero emissions by 2050.
The planet's going to be fried.
Scott Morrison's announced a net zero target for 2050, but that's absolutely the bare minimum.
Hitting 3 degrees of global warming by the year 2100 is possible, and if it happens, the effects could be disastrous. This climate change is triggered by too many greenhouse gases like methane and carbon dioxide entering our atmosphere. The gases trap the heat from our sun, warming the planet. We've already explained how this global warming works and the extreme weather catastrophes it causes. You can learn more about that at the link over here. But the gist of it is, these extreme weather events will continue to get worse if we let our planet's temperatures continue to rise. It might seem the way to stop temperatures rising is to simply cut all emissions of carbon and other greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. But completely cutting emissions from industries like aviation and factory manufacturing is almost impossible. That's where the net zero target comes in.
It's not good enough just to lower our greenhouse gas emissions half even, or even 3/4. We'd still be warming the planet if we're still emitting more carbon than we draw out of the atmosphere.
But what exactly is net zero? How does it work, and how are we going to get there? Let's break it down. In short, it works like this. For every molecule of CO2 that enters our atmosphere, we need to take one out. So the net increase of CO2 in our atmosphere is zero. Dr. Andrew King, climate expert from the University of Melbourne, explains it as balancing out emissions with removal of gases.
The essential idea with net zero is that we stop emitting more carbon into the atmosphere than we take out. And we kind of balance that budget.
If we achieve net zero, we can put a cap on temperatures rising and hopefully one day see them fall.
We know that if we keep increasing carbon dioxide concentrations, we increase the global temperature. And if we manage to get to net zero and stabilize carbon dioxide concentrations, then global temperatures would stop rising. Eventually, over time, they would even start to fall again, especially if we can remove carbon from the atmosphere.
So net zero is this 2-part solution on tackling climate change that governments, corporations, and individual households all have a part to play in. Part 1 is reducing emissions to as close to zero as possible. This is reducing your carbon footprint by doing things like phasing out of coal, transitioning to electric vehicles, or reducing food waste. Companies have been making their own promises to reduce their carbon footprints to net zero. Some of these promises only clean up a small percentage of a company's emissions by promising to plant trees or only cleaning up direct emissions from factories. But other company pledges have more substance, promising to look at the carbon footprint of everything, from materials being mined, manufactured, transported, wasted, to investment in carbon extraction technologies. That's something a conscious consumer is encouraged to read between the lines of, like when choosing a new electricity provider, for example. The second part of net zero has to do with pulling out as much carbon in the atmosphere as we put in. Trees naturally absorb carbon through their roots and their trunks, but more needs to be done, including innovating new negative emission technologies. Direct air capture is an example, taking carbon out of the air and storing it underground. However, scaled up, these technologies are still surrounded by some question marks. That's what makes experts weary of putting faith only in technologies that are not yet concrete in order to achieve targets like net zero by 2050. So governments are making more pledges to net zero, and they have been for a while without seeing much progress.
I mean, it's now 6 years since the Paris Agreement, and we haven't seen really a major dent in greenhouse gas emissions other than due to COVID. We need a kind of a major transformation to actually reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, and we haven't seen that yet.
After COP26 last year, however, Dr. King says there was some progress. It was the 26th United Nations Conference of the Parties, aka countries coming together to talk about climate. Now, 74 parties have communicated targets to achieving net zero. Norway plans to reach net zero by 2030, and Finland by 2035. America and the European Union are working towards achieving net zero by 2050. China has pledged to carbon neutrality by 2060. India has pledged to reach net zero later than 2050, but in a few decades' time. There have also been new global methane pledges to reduce methane emissions by 30%. Dr. King says if these plans are followed through on, we will see some change.
If they were all met, then we should be able to keep global warming below 2 degrees Celsius. And we've never been able to say that before. Before Glasgow, if you added up all the pledges, we were still looking at about 2.2 degrees of global warming. Now it's down to about 1.8 or 1.9.
And with this hope is still some urgency that the world has a long way to go.
We've become more ambitious around reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. There's more policies in place that will support that. And I think for the first time in a long time, many scientists are feeling more optimistic about the trajectory our planet's facing. That's not to say that we're on top of it. There's still a lot of work to do, but we're seeing the right words being said, and hopefully that translates into clear policy and clear emissions reductions. We do need to see even more ambition if we're actually going to keep global warming to below 1.5 degrees. So that's still a very long way off. We've still got a lot of work to do.
Thank you for watching episode 2 in this climate crash course. Today we were talking about net zero. If you want to find out more about what makes climate change a climate crisis, you can watch the first episode in this series, which is linked right here or in the description box down below. If you want more from Rapt, you can check out Travis and I on Show and Tell, where we show each other our favorite headlines of the week and talk about it. Looking forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.